Underneath the arches. I don't actually know how that song goes, so I'll spare you any more of that. I am caught in a thunderstorm without a brolly and with a warm coat, but not a very waterproof coat, in between here and there. So, in the spirit of if life gives you lemons, make lemonade, I thought I'd shoot the video that I've been wanting to shoot. For a little while, so I'm poking my head out from there. Now that rumbling that you can hear, that's not thunder, that's trains going over the bridge above my head. It's supposed to be good luck, isn't it, if you're walking under a bridge and a train goes over? That's what I've heard anyway. I don't know if that's made up. So I'm pointing the camera in this direction because there's fewer people. I don't want to feature innocent people in my video. So I wanted to do a bit of a book review. A book review is probably stretching it a bit, really. It's just a few thoughts because I just read a book. And if I think my thoughts on a book might be interesting or useful, then I sometimes put them out on a video. So, and I've done reviews of other things as well. So check out the playlist. It's called Early's Late Reviews, because normally I'm reviewing things that are hundreds of years old. I've only just got to, because I'm behind the times. This book I think is fairly recent. I'm not sure. I could check, but they always put the date of books in Roman numerals, don't they? MLX, MMM, blah blah blah. And I can barely deal with Arabic numerals, let alone Roman numerals. What do you mean Arabic numerals, Markie? Well, our numbers. The symbols for our numbers are all Arabic. Not a lot of people know that. So the Arabic civilization at one point in history was massively advanced in terms of education and knowledge and science. They didn't call it science back then, but it was what we call science now. And of course mathematics. So there you go. So this is the channel of tangents. This is the home of tangents. If you want me to get to the point, then this is not the channel for you. Okay, so don't leave snarky comments saying, well, you didn't get to the point you went over half an hour before you talked about the topic. That's what we do because it's social media. It's not the television. So anyway, there we go. So I haven't got the book with me. I wanted to have it with me just to look at while I did the review in inverted commas, but I will put it in the thumbnail anyway, so you can see it. I can't remember what the name of the author is. I don't remember anything. So it's a book on the history of delusions, and of course a delusion. In a very specific sense of the word, in a kind of psychological sense of the word, or a psychiatric sense of the word, or even a medical sense of the word, you could say. So a delusion is a break with reality, a belief which is at odds with reality. Here comes the train. Now that gets quite kind of complicated because you can get into kind of the philosophical angle of, well, what is reality, and surely my reality is different to your reality. Do we when we both look at the color green, do we even see the same thing? Yes, all of that is true, but what we mean in this case is where people have usually a very kind of fixed belief that is at odds with most other people's sense of reality, vastly different to another sense of reality. So it's not just like a belief. Lots of people will say that back in Israel a long time ago, a man died and was reborn. Now, if I said to you, my next door neighbour died and was reborn, that's more likely to be a delusion, whereas a belief in the resurrection of Jesus Christ is a belief. Many people would say it's a reality, but I'll leave that to you to decide for yourself. So it's a history book, basically. She's a historian. She's not a clinician or a psychologist. She's consulted a lot of people in the field of psychology and psychiatry and what have you. but she's also kind of looked at documents from going back. Does it go back as early as the 1500s? Certainly the 1600s. And there was a guy featured in the book that wrote a big tome, did lots and lots of research into mental health and what he called melancholia. And a lot of that featured delusions, and he had delusions himself. So that was interesting. And so there's a lot of source material from there. And she's looked at institutions like Bedlam. I was up at Bedlam the other day, actually. The Imperial War Museum in London is on the site in the building that once was Bedlam. Bedlam, it's a phrase that we use. Is a train, so I have to talk loudly. When something's chaotic, we say, oh, it's Bedlam. So Bedlam was I think it was Bethlehem's Hospital or something. It's the Bethlehem Hospital, and it got contracted to Bedlam. So I was up there, the Imperial War Museum, it's a beautiful building with a great big dome and rather lovely. But that was the Bedlam Hospital, and it was infamous. And there were and so a lot of the sources are it's like European sources, quite a lot of stuff from France. And a lot of it relates to early psychiatrists. Probably didn't even call themselves psychiatrists. Certain probably came later. And their cases and their case histories and things that they wrote up and that kind of thing. So, and it talks about, it's very interesting because it talks about how it draws some parallels with how what's going on in society at the time has influences the kind of delusions that people have. So, for example, there was a time in history when glass making, excuse me, throat's a bit dry. The process of there was a big advance in the process of glass making, and you could produce better glass. That was sheet glass, really big sheets of glass. So if you ever look at old cottages and things like that, and you see the kind of the metal crisscross that goes across the windows, that looks like leaves little diamond shapes. So you have small kind of diamond shaped pieces of glass meshed together with this metal, which is usually lead. Leaded lights is actually called. And a lot of that is fake these days. It's just done for effect. So it's a whole sheet of glass, and then they put the crisscross metal train again. So I'm talking loudly over the glass to give that effect because we like it. But back in the day, before they refined the process of glass, they couldn't make big sheets of glass. They could only make little ones. So to make a whole window of glass, you had to basically make a structure and join all these little diamond-shaped pieces of glass together. They didn't have to be diamond-shaped, but that was the common shape. You do see them in other shapes as well. But there was an advancement in the manufacture of glass, and I think it was Charles VI of France. Could be Charles the could be Charles IV, because again, I'm not great with Roman numerals. He among lots of other people at the time, developed the delusion that parts of him, or that I can't remember if it was all of him or parts of him, were made of glass, and he padded himself and wouldn't let anyone get too close to him. Somebody's coming past with some music, because he thought he would shatter, and that was his delusion. And so I'm gonna have to pause a minute, I think, because I can't compete with this music. Somebody with lots of dogs, and I don't know where the music's coming from. He's got a backpack. I think the music's coming from his backpack. Terrible when you get upstaged, isn't it? So, and that was very common at the time for about, I think it's about 100 years after the refinement of the glass making process. Having the delusion that you were made of glass or partially made of glass was quite common. And then for at least 50 or more years after the departure of Napoleon, lots and lots of people thought they were Napoleon. That was their delusion, which is interesting. And I guess today, she doesn't talk about this, but I guess today you get I I think there's a thin line, isn't there, between conspiracy theory and delusion. So I had, when I was living in New Zealand, I had a guy knock on my door out of the blue and ask me about an aerial that was on the house. It was a rented house, and it had this kind of square aerial, which I never really gave any thought to. And this guy was asking me about why have I got a square aerial? And I said, well, I don't know. And he was, clearly, psychotic. So psychotic is a broader condition. I'll get into this in a minute. The difference, what's psychosis? What about hallucinations? What about schizophrenia? Where do all these things fit together? I will cover that in due course. So wait for that. So technology, modern technology. Well, glass is technology, but it's still the same thing, isn't it? It's new technology, but new technology is obviously the technology of today is different, and people are getting delusions based on different technologies. And lots of things in delusions like today, it's all about things, waves and things which influence the brain, that kind of thing. The classic kind of tinfoil hat. But funny enough, the book talks about a case where a guy, probably the first famous case of a guy having a beliefs in devices that alter the brain, goes back to the late, I think it was the 1700s actually, 1700s, I think, possibly crossing into the 1800s. So so that was interesting. So what did I think of the book? So it was I have to keep reminding myself really that it's a history book, not a psychology book, because there's some psychological things which she didn't mention, which I think would have been useful to have talked about, really, just to put things into context. And I think that's kind of, fair, because she's talking about the history of delusions, not the history of psychosis. So let me put that into context, just very simply. So psychosis is a form of mental illness where you can experience delusions and or hallucinations. Train going over again. So, and people get muddled about the difference between the two. So a hallucination is sensory. So hallucination is where you see, hear, smell, taste, feel. I don't know if there's any other forms. Something that is not there. And again, you can get into all the debate about, well, what about if it's a psychic experience and somebody is just seeing something that's on another level of reality? But we won't get into that here. Not that I don't think that's an important and interesting discussion, but it just takes us it's even too big a tangent for me. So that's saying something, isn't it? So and what about schizophrenia? Well, schizophrenia is an illness which includes psychosis. You have psychotic symptoms, but other things as well. So schizophrenia is a subset of psychosis, if you like, but it's also it's got its own thing as well going on. So, for example, one of the things with schizophrenia, one of the symptoms of schizophrenia that can occur is disorganized speech, and what people call word salad, where people will their speech will be very disjointed, and it feels like they're just saying random words that don't connect with one another. That can be one of the, and there can be things like catatonia as well that go with schizophrenia. It's not my field. I mean, I'm very interested in all of this stuff, but so it's not something I'm hugely, have as much expertise on as some of the other things that I talk about. But that's where it all kind of fits together. And this book doesn't go there, which I think is a shame, because I think some of these cases where she's talking about delusions, I think there is actually potentially a crossover into hallucinations, because for the people that thought they were made of glass, was that just a belief, or when they looked at themselves, did they see glass, or when they felt, did they have a physical sensation of being glassy, of being brittle, for example, smooth? That wasn't kind of touched upon. and I kind of thought, oh, you know, it could be a bit of an overlap there. Maybe it doesn't matter really, because it definitely was a delusion going on, but it could have been a combination of delusion and hallucination to some degree. So I suppose that's more the mental health side of me that wanted to explore that side of things. She posits some theories around, you know, why people experience psychosis, which are interesting. So she kind of talks about, you know, the science and what we know, and of course what we don't know. It's always about what with mental health. Obviously, with a lot of physical health, there's a lot. There's a lot that. Well, I say there's a lot that we know. There is a lot that we know, but much more that we don't know. And with mental health, more than physical health, you know, there's much more. There are many more unknowns in mental health where people can, you know, theorize. There is research, but research doesn't always give you all the answers. It can give you, you know, it can render a few jigsaw pieces, but you know, frustratingly doesn't render them all. So I think she's quite clear about that, which is great. And then she posits the idea of, which isn't a new idea, but it's a very, you know, rational and intuitive idea, really, that a lot of delusional states are a form of defense mechanism. So it's kind of crazy. It's kind of paradoxical, really, that in order to stay sane, we go crazy. But for example, the king with the glass delusion, you know, he was, you know, in that world, he would have been constantly crowded by people. People would have, you know, been around him, all over him. No space, really. You don't get much space. She's nosy, wasn't she? Did you see her having a good old nose? She probably thought I was delusional. So, you know, that he might develop that delusion to create an excuse because he feels fragile, he feels brittle, he feels fragile, he feels hemmed in, and that gives him a tangible reason to keep people at arm's length, literally and metaphorically. And I think she gives a couple of examples with some of the other delusions as well, because I've not gone into all the different delusions that are in the book. Read the book. It's, you know, it's very interesting. So she posits a theory around that, which I think is interesting and makes sense, and, you know, it's probably, you know, no different really to what psychoanalytic or psychodynamic psychology's, you know, always said, really. But I think it feels like she's kind of come upon that independently, rather than, you know, taking it wholesale from a school of psychology or a belief system, which is great. She's not she's not from the psychological world. She's not a mental health professional, but I still think it's great that she's theorizing. I think theorizing is always good. You know, the more theories, you know, theories aren't necessarily right, but the more theories you can put on the table, the more chance you've got of finding the truth. And also sometimes, you know, often these things, you know, most things really have multiple causes. Very few things have a single cause. That's something Scott Peck talks about a lot, or did, because he's passed on, sadly. So I thought it was good that she theorized. I thought it was a little bit of a mission, really, that she didn't talk a little bit more about mental health more broadly, and psychosis, and, you know, hallucinations, and just that wider context, really. What else didn't I like about the book? I didn't particularly like her style. I found it a little bit dry. There were some attempts at humour in there, but not that many. I also thought that she went into, for me certainly, went into too much detail, because she gave very detailed biographies of the main people that she was drawing from. And I was kind of thinking, yeah, I don't need to know all about this guy's, you know, life history. I just, you know, I suppose really I wanted the information. That's why I read the book. And I could have got the raw data in the form of a list You know, it could have been very, very concise. You know, the actual raw data of, you know, what do we know about the history of psychosis, and what forms of delusion have people had going back in the past, and are they different to the ones today, or are there, you know, threads that continue from you know, deep into history, from right through to today. So that data, I suppose, you know, could have been, you know, written on the back of a postcard, not a postage stamp, but certainly a postcard. And it was quite a, I'd say it was a long book, but it wasn't a short book either. And I thought it went on a little bit into too much detail. But it's a history book, isn't it? And it's giving history, which is what it's supposed to do. And while I do like history, I'm I don't want too much detail with my history. I'm a more of a romantic historian. You know, I like to know what happened. I like to know, you know, who done it, who the main characters are. I like to kind of know what it, you know, might have looked like and smelt like and felt like. But I'm more into the feel of history. I like to grasp the essence and the sense of history. Some people that like history, they just like every little detail. Every little detail is like a juicy morsel for them. So when I did history at school, but I dropped out because it was just too much detail. And some people I know that follow history, they just love every little thing, don't they? And they're forever kind of, you know, history books are forever kind of giving lists of how many pence and shillings a farm labourer in 1830 would have earned. And that means, you know, I have no interest in that whatsoever. Because I haven't really got a proper, you know, I've got no sense at all of, you know, what a penny and a shilling was in 1830. I've got very little sense of, you know, what a pound and a penny is today. So I think that's possibly a reflection on me, really, that I was wanting the psychology. I just wanted to cut into the chase, really. And it's a history book, so in a way I think, you know, that criticism is unfair, okay, but I will stand by not liking the style too much. It was quite an intellectual style that assumed a lot of prior knowledge. So she made, you know, references to lots of things in history that, unless you knew your history, you think, well, what does that mean and what's that? And you'd have to either ignore it and carry on, or you'd have to go away and look it up. I did look a few things up, actually, and I came across what I think was a bit of a Mandela Effect. I'll probably do another video on that, actually. I had a Mandela Effect, which is interesting. Check out my playlist. I think I've got a playlist now of Mandela Effects, because I've experienced a few possible Mandela Effects. Okay, I'm not going to say the definite Mandela Effects. And when it comes to the Mandela Effect, you know, it doesn't state the cause anyway. So I guess I can say a definite Mandela Effect, because it's about the phenomenon, not a belief about the cause. So yeah, the style, kind of, I don't know. It's a bit like there's some newspapers. I mean, I've got you know, a higher vocabulary than the average, and I love words, and I've got a very good general knowledge when it comes to certain things, particularly history. A very poor general knowledge when it comes to things that I'm not interested in. That's the autistic side of me, really. Like sport, I know nothing. Cars, I know nothing. But like, you know, history, you know, geography probably to some degree. I know quite a lot. But history, I've got a good grounding in history. I don't kind of torture myself with too much of the detail. But if you ask me for a thumbnail sketch of you know, most things are, oh, it's a dog barking, but it's amplified by the railway arch. I could give you a thumbnail sketch of an awful lot of things in history. I would oversimplify it. You know, I would make, you know, it's right behind me barking at me. Hello, what's the matter? Are you barking at me? Oh, he wants me to throw his ball. There's your mummy up there. bless him, he wanted me to throw his ball. Oh, little sausage. I thought he was a way away. I didn't realise he was right behind me. I love dogs. So what was I saying? Normally I interrupt myself. I don't normally have the pleasure of being interrupted by cute dogs. But I thought the book presumed a little bit too much, and to me it's got the resonance of some of these newspapers that go reach for the thesaurus and just pluck out big words just so that it flatters the reader. So the reader thinks they're clever because they're reading a newspaper that's got these big words in, even though they don't know what they mean. And they have to reach for a dictionary. I don't like that. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe that's unfair. Maybe it's just. But it was aimed at the layperson. This book. It wasn't aimed at the academic. So yeah, I didn't. That's a criticism, I think. Another plus, though, just to balance that out, is she's clearly academic and clearly did some rigorous research and has listed all her a full bibliography, and there's additional notes to certain things. Which probably explain. I didn't look at them. Probably explain the history bits that she referred to and didn't explain. I don't know. Should have. Maybe I've done a disservice to her in that. I would say this is more of a book for people who are interested in history than interested in psychology. But certainly interesting, and it was useful for me just to get a better understanding of. I was going to say psychopathy then. Why was I going to say psychopathy? It's that dogs throw me off track of psychosis. So I enjoyed it, but found some bits of it a bit wearing, which is probably what you found about this video if you got to the end. So thank you for listening. Hope that was interesting, and I will see you in the next one. If you can help us out, that would be much appreciated. The best way you can help us at the moment really is joining us on our Patreon channel, where you can sponsor what we do. Because ultimately, although we talk about all kinds of things and we get interrupted by dogs, we are a channel that's all about helping people with a horrible mental health condition called retroactive jealousy. And everything that we do is to that end, even though it might not seem like it. It might seem like a wonderful cornucopic who's been reading the thesaurus now, a medley of all kinds of different things. That's our true focus and our true aim, and if you help us, you're helping people with a horrible condition, so we really appreciate it. So I will see you in the next one, which could be about retroactive jealousy or could be about almost anything else. I will do one soon about the Mandela Effect, and I will catch you soon. Rangimarie.